Welcome to the Domestic Supply Chain Summit. Today we are joined by Robert Koelsch, CEO and co-founder of Advanced Energy Machines, aka AEM Green. Thank you so much for joining us today, Robert.
Good to see you, Mary.
I'm excited for today. For those who might not know, there is an extended episode or two of the conversation similar to what we're having today on running on ice, which is just a shameless plug for myself. But more importantly, Robert, we're getting into kind of all things green energy as it pertains to TRUs, which are kind of the reefer units that keep trailers cold. Before we get too far into that, though, let's get some background on you and why you started AEM Green.
Well, we wanted to do something for the transportation sector 12 years ago that we didn't feel was being addressed with proper green technology to really save people using combustion motors money. So our goal was to find the application that we call the gold nugget, the one that you can actually use to reduce carbon in your operation while saving money at the same time, rather than have a huge cost burden for trying to reduce your carbon footprint. So we went at it and said, the best bang for the buck are these transport refrigeration units. They use a lot of diesel. They emit a lot of what we really don't like is the black carbon, the real fine black carbon that they emit that is so detrimental to human beings. And so it's not just a carbon footprint or an ESG program, it's a real health program. So we jumped into it and said, hey, we think we can do this. We've done it.
I mean, I think that's pretty safe to say. It's one of those that I don't think people realize the kind of the overall negative impacts. It's not necessarily just, reduce or creating carbon for the environment or creating greenhouse gases. It's really like the diesel that those units emit. It's something that negatively impacts the drivers that are driving and negatively impacts people who are working around it day by day. And even the people in the warehouses that have to have those units on and running while they're loading a truck, like that's a lot of fumes that you end up inhaling.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so the human context of how close the human being has to be to the machine to get our food delivered to the grocery stores and the restaurants every day. And it's not just them, Mary, but it's also the residents that live next to the grocery stores that, you got to keep that reefer running to keep the food cold. And so there's a lot of emissions near the residential areas of the grocery stores and restaurants.
Yeah, and I think that's something that more and more people are kind of realizing. But it's like not fast enough to make it where these changes are happening faster. But that being said, so it seems like kind of over the past few years, there's been all these amazing sustainability initiatives, and there's been a lot of greenwashing, and then we're reducing our carbon credits and other stuff like that. But it kind of almost feels like you're overwhelmed in a way. And so you're kind of like burnt out and you have like what they call like the green fatigue. So why do you think that now is while the time everybody's kind of like worn down on sustainability and different metrics like that? Why do you think now is actually the best time as a business to double down on it?
Well, I think right now is an excellent time because, as you said, people have been forced maybe a little prematurely to do maybe the wrong thing. And so I think everybody with their green fatigue type thinking is sitting back going, okay, what's the right thing? And if we can accomplish the right thing, it's the right thing to do, regardless of regulation, for instance. So it's the right thing to do for our corporation, for our people, for the environment, for our corporation to tell its shareholders about if you're publicly held. And so it's a great time to proceed forward, even though you're not being forced to it. It says something to the consumer. It says something to the consumer market, and it says something to your employees.
I think that the aspect of it and the consumer is really important because the consumer drives like most, especially for those that are publicly held, because the consumer can impact their stocks, their shareholder, their prices. They can do a lot. I mean, we've seen a lot of examples of it so far this year and kind of all throughout the past few years that consumers will continue to vote with their dollars. And if you're doing things that they don't appreciate, they will take their dollars somewhere else, which at the time is usually fine. But if they continue to find those replacements, then why would they come back to you if they already have a a fantastic alternative. And I really like that you said that it's the right thing to do. It's not just because, oh, there's a regulation that came down and said I needed to change change my fuels or be, within a certain amount of greenhouse gas emissions or something like that, or I need to offset my carbon. It really is the right thing to do for the environment, for employees, for your consumers. And it really, like from a cost perspective, it doesn't seem that it's that much more of a impact long term. I know upfront there's like some costs with changing things around and switching from diesel to solar, but it doesn't seem like it's going to have that significant of an impact to the bottom line. Unless I'm off of base here.
No, that's exactly right. It's not only not going to have a big impact on the bottom line, you could actually save money doing it versus diesel. And of course, we're all watching diesel prices decrease right now. So let's face it, the next few years, we're probably going to be, you know, diesel and crude runs the world as we know it currently. And so that's not going to change anytime soon. But moving forward to a carbon-free and really this fine particulate-free environment is just a natural thing to do. It's going to happen. And so integrating it into your operations and doing it rather than being forced to dramatically overnight, having some time to digest it is really important.
Yeah, and I think that, like, so what does that look like if I am a shipper or a carrier and I have maybe 100 trucks that are diesel powered reefer units? What does that look like to switch? Do I just suddenly like show up at your house and say, "Hey, not your house, your business," and say, "Hey, I've got 100 trucks. I want to convert them all to solar. Do we do these now, or is it more of a phased approach? Like, what does that look like in that whole overhaul situation? Is it kind of a massive undertaking, or can it be more of a less of a stressor?"
No, that's an excellent, really excellent question. The common meetings that we have with people are, first of all, getting them used to the technology, understanding the difference in their operations per day, which honestly are very minor, but they have to really understand what the difference is to expect their people to maintain and work on the electrics versus diesels. So that's kind of the first thing you have to discuss. And then it's really an integration strategy of, okay, let's look at your power. How much power do you have at your facility? The way we designed our system is we're very, very soft on their electrical grid. And so we really don't need much power. You can do 10 of these. If you have 100 units, you can do 10 of these without a blink of an eye to where you don't even have to think about power. You might have to reroute a little power from a breaker panel, but you really don't have much of a draw on your facility. And so that gives you a first look. Those first 10 units, 10% of your fleet, gives you a first look at, okay, here's the end of the year. We do reports for the state of California, for instance, every year that says, here's how much diesel fuel you saved this year. Here's what it cost you. Here's the offset. Here's the real cost of your ton of carbon that you saved this year. And surprisingly, oftentimes it's zero. So it really didn't cost you anything to reduce this carbon. And so you say, well, gee, I'll do 5 more or 10 more next year. And maybe over a 10-year period, because the life cycle on these TRUs are typically, 7 to 10 years. In California, you've got good roads and not so much salt like we do in the Midwest. So, you might get 12 years out of it. So if your life cycle on your trailers themselves are 7 to 10 years, it really works out nicely to do 10 or 15% per year to make the changeover and, experience the improvement.
Because if it's the same cost as like if I switch over 10 units and I have a net almost zero or a negligible difference on my balance sheet, but the next year I'm doing 10 more, that's the yes, it would still show that there's essentially no change in my balance sheet, but I'm not paying for diesel for the rest of the ones that I've done the year before.
Right.
So potentially 2 years in, I'm already seeing significant savings of not having to purchase diesel. And selfishly, I don't have my workers getting sick at the warehouse, or I see them getting healthier, which is, also important for health insurance premiums.
Sure. I mean, it affects people and, increased blood pressure when you get the fine particulate in your body. It, long term really affects your organs. But in the short term, it's things like blood pressure, it's things like asthma, it's things like colds not showing up for work because you contracted a cold because of what you're breathing. So I mean, there's some real world. We tend not to spend a lot of time on that with our customers, but real world, it's the truth, it's reality.
Yeah. I mean, when you're already at a net zero essentially effect to the balance sheet, that's kind of hard to top on top of that. Um, but that being said, when it comes to kind of making the switch to this, so if I'm a company and I'm on the fence on it, or I'm contemplating making a switch, what is kind of that piece of advice you have, or that one real clear, realistic first step that you can take if you're a company that's feeling really just overwhelmed by everything?
Well, just take a deep breath, take a step back. And, if they're dealing with us, then they've got a one-stop shop. So we actually look at their grid loading right now at each dock door or out in the parking lot. And we can give them a good analysis of, okay, if you did 10 units of your 100, here's how we would handle the power redistribution. Here's the cost. Do you want to buy it? Do you want to lease it? What's the most cost-effective strategy for you? And at the end of the year, you've saved probably 270 tons of carbon. Well, that's a big number. Yeah. 10 of these units, that's what you'll typically save, is 270 tons of carbon. And, when you think about that, you say, all right, take 270 tons of dirt in a truck and throw it around your distribution center. See what it looks like. Now, granted, you're doing that over 365 days, but when you think of it in those terms, the difference in the air is a lot.
I don't even think that I can imagine 275. I almost said 275,000. No, 275 tons. I don't think I can even imagine what that looks like in dump truck form.
It's
That's a lot.
it makes your area very dirty, so there's a lot of cleanup involved in a catastrophe like that. So, it's so fine and it's so small amount every day, and it's distributed around your area, that you don't notice it maybe. But a lot of bad things in life creep up on us like that in our bodies.
Yeah. I'm just trying to picture if it was essentially a pocket's worth of dirt, but you had a pocket or a bucket every day. At first you would be like, oh, it's not that bad. But then by the end of the year, you're like, that's a lot of dirt.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I know that's the worst example possible, but it's something that's a visual representation of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one thing to be maybe in the Midwest and you got, 15-mile-an-hour breeze blowing and it's 72 degrees in the summer and, you know, everything's wonderful. But you get out into the Southwest and it's 105 degrees and, you've got a high pressure system that's forcing everything down to the ground and there's no wind. It's ugly.
Yeah.
It's ugly.
That's
And with that heat, these reefers have to run and run and run and run. So it's significant.
Yeah, that is something that we've definitely brought up a lot before is running something in the summer in the Midwest that has to stay cold. Your reefer unit has to work pretty hard, but not quite as hard as if it's driving through the desert of Arizona, because that is just relentless in every way, shape, and form.
Yep. Yep. And these TRUs sit there in the parking lots as they're loading food and pre-cooling food, getting it ready to go out on the road, and they just sit there and run and run and run
Hmm.
stationary in a single area in mass around human beings. And it's just trucks aren't that way, right? The truck
Hmm.
loads up and heads out on the road.
Yep. All right. Well, Robert, if for anyone that wants to reach out to you or maybe has more questions about how solar TRUs work, where can they find you outside of the summit?
Well, AEM.green is a wonderful website that our wonderful person, Erica, has developed. And it has a tremendous amount of information on it. And between that and a phone call to us, we can have a pretty serious conversation right off the bat.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and everyone should stay tuned. We have some amazing content coming your way for the rest of the summit.